Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. Guys, I've got with me today Debbie McGrath, who is founder of HR.com. Debbie, how you doing today?
I'm great, Nikki. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to talk to you. There's so much that is happening right now at this inflection point of marketing and how that plays into recruitment, retention, and all things HR. And you've just got a wealth of experience and knowledge to share with us today. And in particular, we're going to be talking about why folks still struggle with engagement. But before we get into all of that, Debbie, I'd love it if you would just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the folks at HR.com are up to these days.
Sure, Nikki. So first of all, I founded HR.com 20 years ago, which, believe it or not, was before video even existed on the internet. So lots has changed in that relatively short time frame that I started HR.com. But currently, we have 1.75 million members from around the world with a heavy concentration in the North American market. And what we do is we help them to create engaged and inspired workplaces. What we do is help the HR professionals in their career to maximize their potential, navigate their careers, and in return, inspire the workplaces that they contribute to each and every day. And we understand that there's a large opportunity ahead of us to make sure that the HR professionals have the right skills and competencies to do their job. And we are truly committed to helping them do a better job. Myself, personally, I've been in the HR space for over 30 years, 20 years at the helm of HR.com, but always passionate about helping HR professionals get smarter and better at their job. And really what we're going to talk about today is engagement. And what that also means is measuring what they're good at and what matters.
I love it. And I'm so glad we're going to dig into this. I think that I don't know that there are very many other resources that are geared specifically at supporting HR professionals. And I think that the sometimes the sad reality of that role can end up being, seen so much as an administrative sort of role. I mean, which it does involve, that people forget that these are still folks that want to be inspired, that have passion and career aspirations, and that we need to speak to them and for them in this same kind of way. So the space that HR.com fills, I think, is really important. So if you would, real quick, just to frame up the conversation, give us a sort of quick overview of the state of things as it pertains to these HR professionals and where sort of the hiccups are when it comes to measuring the experience of employees, contractors, alumni, just folks along that chain for us.
Okay, so we're spending a lot of time talking about what we call the human experience. It's a broader topic than employee engagement, because as Nikki says, we believe that if you are looking at the whole experience, you've got to measure the perception of the contractors in your workplace, the employees in your workplace, the candidates that apply to your workplace, and the alumni that potentially could come back to your workplace. So engagement's a term that's been around for a long time. And unfortunately, even with the advent of all these technology, not much has been done to raise the bar and have more people productive or engaged at work each and every day. So we feel that this is predominantly an HR issue. HR has to be more accountable and responsible for measuring the engagement in their organization across all those four stakeholders that we talked about. And until they can actually measure where it currently exists and know what the issues are, they can't possibly put any proactive measurements or tools in place to help improve the engagement or productivity of people in the workplace.
It begs a question. I'm super curious about this because I guess at my sort of level of employment or my experience level, the way that I've engaged with HR has been through, here's how you sign up for healthcare, and now we're having an exit interview. So not that I'm constantly leaving organizations, but I'm just saying, like, the fact that you mentioned candidates through alumni, I think is really important. And so I'm really interested in what exactly some of those other touch points are along that journey.
Well, let's start at the beginning. So let's talk about the candidate's experience, right? So I happen to sit on the Talent Board, which is a not-for-profit that just focuses on the candidate experience. And we have several 100,000 people who participate in employee surveys every year, telling employers, mostly the Fortune 1000 in the US, but some global, about what it's like to apply to various companies throughout the world. And what we do know is that the Net Promoter Score, which is a very impactful measurement tool, tells us that the application process is not ideal, okay? And that we are annoying a lot of the candidates, potentially good hires or customers that could be working or using your company's products and services. So if you're treated very, very poorly, and let's just pick any brand, okay? If you're treated really, really poorly in an application process, you're less likely to promote that brand or shop in that brand again.
Right.
If you're not even acknowledged through the interview process and you firmly believe that you have the skills to do that job, you don't think as highly of that brand or company or place to work as you did before you started that employment process.
Right.
So helping recruiters in this instance better manage the application process, measure what their net promoter score is in the candidate apply role is essential. Because if you don't measure what it is and what the candidate perception is, it's going to have lots of negative impact on your ability to create a brand that's worth working for. It's going to show up on your Glassdoor ratings, people talking about the process, and not being a positive experience.
I think it's so powerful that you, as a leader in this space, having founded HR.com and having had all this experience with the many different functions under the sort of HR umbrella, are taking ownership of this. I have to tell you, I've had a few conversations this week and last week leading up to a couple of conferences having to do with HR and recruitment professionals. And a lot of those conversations have been with marketers. Yeah. And so you've said, pretty unambiguously, right, that this is something that is up to HR to own in a lot of ways. And what I've been talking to these marketers about is, who owns it and what part of this journey, right, does marketing or recruitment marketers in particular need to take ownership of in their own right? So my question is, to what extent do those two disciplines need to collaborate? Are you seeing that a lack of alignment and collaboration there is an issue? And what do we do?
Well, it is an issue. So at HR.com, we do a lot of primary research, and we have a research report out on the state of recruitment marketing, which you can download for free from HR.com at any given time. But it does clearly indicate that there is two things that are wrong with the recruitment marketing position within an HR department. One is that these people do not have the skills or the training to do the job. Okay, they were brought up as recruiters, not as marketing people.
Right.
Two, they haven't built relationships with their marketing department that is collaborative in nature and can help both of them win. So they feel very intimidated by their marketing people. They feel that they try to put them under control. They don't let them do the things that they need to do to promote their employment brand. But the reality is they haven't built the trust they need. So those are two very important facts that we found, which is all pointing to a skills gap within the HR department.
For sure. So how do we address that? I mean, do we hire for a different skill set in recruitment marketing, or do we make their training more inclusive of these skills that we're talking about once we get them on board?
Well, there isn't a lot of these people with these skills available. So you have to train them. So marketing's got to invest in some training for these HR people, and HR people have to be open to new ideas, new skills, and new competencies.
Yeah. Other than marketing, what other relationships do HR professionals and HR leaders need to build within an organization to improve the experience? We are talking about, at the end of the day, engagement experience along the journey of a candidate to an employee, to an alumni, to a contractor, like you spoke about. Mm-hmm. Where else can we sort of fill gaps there?
So we talked only about one of those 4 areas of the business, right? So we just talked about the candidates.
Right.
So like you started this conversation about your interaction with HR people. Unfortunately, that's a lot of companies' interaction with HR people, right? So it's also equipping all of HR people with the ability to have meaningful career development conversations with the employees throughout their life. So it's not just hire them and then fire them. It's the whole career development, setting expectations and goals for people on a regular basis, continuous performance management and feedback. All of those things are really, really essential, and the roles that HR people play in developing their human capital. And
I love this.
Maximizing their potential, right?
So, I love this. What you just, because again, my experience was as a salesperson, right? Uh-huh. And so the people who I'm engaging with in terms of career path and having those kinds of meaningful conversations are folks who really are kind of too busy and who are kind of too self-interested to really have that conversation in a way that serves me the way that, or serves any employee, the way that it would if it were the HR professional having those conversations. I think you're absolutely right. And that's kind of what I was getting at. So there's the relationship that you talked about, HR folks building with marketing. And then here we just identified, and that's for candidates. And then when you look at the employee part of the journey, then there's a relationship with the respective disciplines, right? Whoever, whether it's sales or, engineering or whatever, making sure that it's not just their floor manager that they're having these career conversations with. I think that's how retention happens, right? Yep. And I think that's how satisfaction and engagement happens. Now, what about this next step, the alumni part of the puzzle? Talk about what that interaction needs to be.
Okay, if I could just step back 1 second,
Sure.
though, and say for the employee perspective, 2 things very clear. One is they need to be able to measure what matters to them in their job and have clear goals, objectives, and KPIs. Okay, so if an employee doesn't have that, they're not going to be successful in achieving what they need to get done, and they won't know what success or engagement looks like. Okay. Mm. But that concept also applies to other people within the organization. So the contingent workforce that shows up every day, maybe it's the people in your cafeteria that serve food. It might be the cleaners at night, or it may be a bunch of consultants that are working on a big project you have. They also need that. Okay. HR, we do a really bad job of saying, oh, those are somebody else's employees. Mm-hmm. Their responsibility. But the reality is they're interfacing with your employees and on your deliverables, and you're accountable for them making their goals. So don't forget the contingent workforce. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, I left out the contractors or the contingent workforce as you termed them. It's absolutely right. Especially when we're in an environment where so many teams are remote, and those remote teams are comprised almost entirely, a lot of the time, of a contingent workforce or of contract employees. And, you can really see engagement fall off because sometimes, a lot of the time, the remote teams don't even have an HR department or an HR professional on staff. And so you sort of
everybody has some form of HR on staff. Mm-hmm. They may not be in the same building, but they're all available through a Zoom call, or like very small companies may have an HR department of one, but they all have somebody responsible for the people management side of their business.
Right. And those folks just need to understand what the actual expectation is relative to that organization.
Yeah.
I think you're so right. I do want to make sure we hit this 4th one, though. Tell us about what that HR relationship and set of responsibilities looks like when it comes to engagement and the alumni.
Right. So every day we lose good people, right? We lose them predominantly because of bad managers. but we lose them for life instances, mobility issues, a whole bunch of other areas. So many of these alumni are eligible to be rehired or be boomerangs and come back into the workforce, right? So we have to have a way of keeping in touch with them, of communicating to them other opportunities that are available and encouraging them to come back or to recommend other people to come back, right? So HR's job is to build that talent pool of potential alumni that are maybe subject matter experts, know something that could be used for onboarding, training, continuity in their job, or just having them come back in a different role.
Yeah. I think you're so right. I think that's an untapped resource. There's so many organizations that I've worked for that I still am so passionate about what they do and still believe so much in, my positive experience there, but who'd never know it because there is no channel that's direct to them. I mean, there's third-party sites where I could go and review them and things like that. And there's one-off conversations that I could have with folks on LinkedIn if they ask me what my experience was like at this organization or the next. But this idea of it being a function of an HR professional or an HR department to keep up with that and to really tap into that resource, I think is really powerful.
It's HR's job. Unfortunately, when you get into smaller companies where it's a department of one, they can't possibly do all this work effectively.
Sure.
HR is a complex area of the business. So you're only going to see really great leadership development programs, really great attention to retention in the larger companies where people have the data and the resources to put proactive plans in place. So
for sure.
Super hard in small businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, but worth investing in when you can, for sure. Gosh, thank you so much for the way that you laid this out. You certainly taught me a thing or seven. So I'm super glad that you came to do this with us today. And we'll have to have you back on because there's so many more questions that I think our listeners, those folks out there trying to grow companies, could stand to gain from you. But now that I've successfully picked your brain and seen what I could get out of it, it's time, Debbie, for you to tell us about what you are putting in it. So talk to us about a learning resource that you engage with that's either informing your approach or that's just got you excited these days.
Well, two things that I'd like to recommend to our audience. One is a book called Measure What Matters. So it is written by John Doerr, one of the top venture capitalists in the California market. This really brought to light how easy and important developing OKRs are for any organization and why you need them if you're going to scale your business. Okay? Essential. I see this OKR business as being the next version of project management. Every organization will use this as an operating system, and every organization needs training and education to do this better. That's number one resource. The second, and this is a pre-published version, but I love this book called It's a Manager by Gallup. It is in market now. I think it came out maybe July 1st, but a while ago. But this is a simple guide for any manager who doesn't have strong HR skills to figure out what is their role in helping develop and grow their employee base.
And I love that you have actual books as well. I have to be honest with you. I listen to a lot of audio books. So somebody that comes in here with fingers between pages, I respect that all day long. But I know that folks who are listening, just like me, have become fast fans of yours. You are such a wealth of knowledge. People are going to want to keep up with you. Tell us, Debbie, how folks can connect with you.
The easiest way to connect with me is by email. So dmcgrath@hr.com. But I can also be found on Facebook or LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter is D McGrath.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. Like I said, thanks for coming on. I can't wait to have you on again in the future and tackle something else and hopefully empower more folks out there trying to grow businesses and specifically more HR folks out there just trying to get their job done right. Thanks again, Debbie.
Thank you, Nikki.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.